Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our Quality 4.0 Turning Data into a Competitive Edge webinar. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined with Keith, Jay Velayutham from Kaizen and Vayan Group to talk about how data is really becoming the foundation across all the analytics, the AI, and the transformation layer and manufacturing plants, specifically auto OEMs. Imagine if every machine on your line behaved like a fitness tracker, flagging tiny deviations before they became injuries. That's the promise of Quality 4.0. And today we'll explore how data-centric thinking is rewriting the rules of manufacturing. I'm sure all of us have heard of Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution, but Quality 4.0 is that application of Industry 4.0's technology. Industrial IoT, cloud-native data platforms, advanced analytics, and of course, AI to traditional quality management disciplines so that defects are predicted and prevented in real time rather than reactive and reworked after the fact. So as I mentioned, thrilled to be joined today with Keith Buckley, CEO of Vayan Group, Jay Velayutham, and Chetan Shah from Kaizen Analytics. And instead of product pitches, what we want to do is probe into 3 areas over the next 30 minutes. Number 1, why modern quality in manufacturing is less about catching defects and more about predicting behavior, how clean data becomes common language everyone from plant managers to a VP of ops can speak. And then obviously with all the talk and all the excitement around AI, how that actually helps the continuous improvement cycle. So let's dig right in. Keith, let's start with what are some of the outdated assumptions that still dominate plant floors today and what you guys are seeing at Vayan?
We see quite a bit of old legacy thinking as well as some unbelievably creative modern thinking. And where we have had a tendency to have our best input, and this is not again pitching us, but just where we get to see and be able to have the most benefit to our customers, is those places where the old outdated quality is just a thing that you do, you spend money on to make sure that your quality is good, and it's just a cost of doing business, versus looking at quality as a competitive mode, using your thinking as a tool around quality to say, how do I make sure that I have the most efficient process to generate the highest quality outcome of our product, while at the same time then minimizing costs, which I can do, but stop treating it as a cost center and stop treating it as something that's just a natural expense of what you have to do, but instead look at it with a little bit more forward thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, I'd love for you to expand on that. I know you have some really deep experience on the plant floor and applying the data strategy and operations at the plant level and obviously across manufacturing. Can you share some examples of how this outdated thinking has really maybe kept manufacturing plants behind, and maybe the inverse, which is some examples where they've taken a different approach and has really paid off?
Yeah, in battery manufacturing, for example, right? I'm gonna look forward in where our industry has gone and where they continue to go. So I'll bring in, EV battery manufacturing as an example where some of this needs to change, because any traceable issue like with lithium purity during raw material sourcing can go undetected. And then what happens is it continues to go upstream to your multiple tiers until it ends up at the OEM. Eventually, the customer has to face it in terms of a warranty or a recall. And so that's where detecting and sharing data becomes important. Without integrated data across raw material, across the cell manufacturing, module manufacturing, and then eventually getting to the pack life cycle, upstream quality misses become very, very expensive downstream failures, right? So by being able to collect data on the plant floor accurately, quickly, and immediately share it, connect it, contextualize it is going to be very important as we move forward and connect the data across the battery value chain, specifically just in battery, in one piece of the automotive, right? Being able to predict and prevent defects before they escalate.
That's really helpful, Jay. Chetan, out of curiosity, you have some really great background with laying the data strategy, laying the data foundations layer Where do companies stumble, and what are the common mistakes that you see that they're making as they're going on this journey that Jay's outlining?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. And as Keith and Jay both mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities that the companies can make the use of with data. But some of the stumblings that the way I see it is, decisions are made on gut feeling, right? Or outdated information. So what that does is you miss out on opportunities or you have inefficient operations, right? Sometimes the data is always an afterthought, right? And it's like, oh yeah, we need to go look at the data instead of making data as your priority. Data is in silos, as Jay and Keith mentioned. So marketing has their own data, research has their own data, manufacturing has their own data, and kind of not talking. So this fragmented data leads to a lot of these noisy signals, right? They don't give us accurate insight. The third thing that I found was data literacy, right? The trust, that's not trust. So what that does is that leads to an inability to do analytics, inability to do predictive personalization, which is a big thing, right? And prevention. And then the last thing is, very reactive quality control organizations around automotive think about making things proper after the thought, right? And instead of saying, let's use data to prevent quality problems and issues, right? And what does all this lead to? Well, this all leads to ineffective customer insights, right? Now, you can't give good intelligence to your customers, nor can you use that good intelligence for yourself. Right? So these are some stumbles that I have seen that automotive organizations kind of go through.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned that. The more and more we talk to leaders in the manufacturing, specifically automotive OEM space, they're recognizing it's not the plants, it's not the IP, the people, or obviously the physical goods. That's their competitive differentiator. It's actually their data and laying that data foundation, to your point. I want to explore how we actually build that data culture and drive that change management throughout the plants and obviously throughout the entire operations lifecycle. Keith, how do you think and how have you seen a data first strategy sort of flip that script going from reactive to proactive?
First off, I'm fortunate enough to be I've worked in multiple manufacturing facilities and companies in my career. And I'm fortunate to be working right now in a company who had the foresight some years ago to be capturing data, not because they knew that AI was on the horizon or that there were going to be any gigantic shifts in how data was used, but just because they were smart enough to realize that the value of capturing data for ensuring that we're able to report back to customers what we're seeing and to be able to provide validation of things that we've done, right? So you start with that. Now, where it's gotten really interesting for us and for places that we've been working and looking at this is that the historical data sets that we have, and they're very, very rich across multiple OEMs, across multiple suppliers to those OEMs, across multiple products that are being manufactured. And so both in the OEM level and at the supplier level, you start to build this really rich data set that you're able to mine and look for trends, just as it's happening with the large language models and others that we see in the more commonplace AI that everybody's used to. But we're able to utilize that data to see trends, to see how do you beat the odds on failure modes, and how do you predict where are the most likely places that we're going to have any kind of an issue long before you're even in the business of actually making a product. And I think that's been one of the most valuable things that I've learned over my career, but certainly in the course of the last couple of years, is how do we leverage this wealth of data that we have to ensure that before we turn the first screwdriver, so to speak, we already know of the likely outcome of what a product's going to look like and what the quality issues would be related to that.
Yeah, in such a unpredictable time, macro environment that we live in, predictability, agility, speed is so important, to your point, Keith, to help that data come alive quickly. Jay, what have you seen on the ground to operationalize, and more importantly, the secret sauce, for lack of a better term, that lets that data come alive so quickly that we're all sitting on?
Yeah, Kate brought up leveraging the rich data sets, right? And I think every company, every organization is also a data company, right? We hear that over and over again. Not just a manufacturing company, you're also a data company. And so with that rich data set is how do we use it? And that's where a lot of times organizations have a little bit of struggle. Do we just dump all the data into a data lake and then figure it out? Let's just put it all in one place. That's where I've been a big proponent of basic as use case driven, right? And a lot of times we get really excited because there's a lot of data's gold and we can do a lot of stuff with it. But it's really about that one metric that matters, right? And what is that one problem that we want to solve as an organization, right? Is it reducing our quality or warranty by 20% or, whatever it is, pick a use case, pick a challenge, pick a metric and go after that. Because when you go use case driven, like in the example of predicting battery cell failures before pack integration, it creates a magnetic pull for the right data to surface. You can wander around in a forest, but if you know where you're going and you have a map, then you let everything else come together as you go. So you're no longer boiling the ocean. You're solving a real problem that's going to drive real value. And in the process, you end up fixing the foundation. And that's when the data starts to work for the organization.
Yeah, kind of to Keith's point, you don't know what the endpoints are, what the goal is that you're trying to align for before you even start building the prompt/LLM, aka assigning the appropriate use case to be able to actually answer a specific question, I should say, or drive a specific business outcome. This is a mindset change, right? People, process, technology, and if you think about change management, Chetan, in your experience in working with large, complex manufacturers, how do you drive the data culture across every level of the organization?
Right. So this is fantastic. Like Keith talked about kind of bringing the data together, right? And then Jay talked about, hey, let's zoom into those problem areas. Let's not boil the ocean. Fantastic. But in order to do all that, we need a data culture, a data collective mindset of behavior that we all need to kind of march together, right? And then use all this to make decisions, not only for your organization, but let's partner with our suppliers. Let's partner with our PMs. Let's partner with our quality control leaders, your data providers like S&P, Global, Carfax, to name a few, right? So it's a collective mindset, right? On how do we look at the data? How do we figure out how clean the data is? And then how do we drive it, right? And if you do this and you do this right, it starts to promote literacy of data, right? Everybody's talking about data and the language becomes data, right? Everybody will start trusting from the plant floor up to the leadership. And then this is beautiful because you just empower your team because everybody trusts the data. So, hey, use this data to really drive the organization. So there you see transparency, accountability, innovation, improvements. I mean, it's just so beautiful, right? So it's a collective mindset and the behavior that will help drive all this data and the organization to the next level. And then you'll start seeing insights firing at all signals, right? So
it's really a culture change to your point. And I'm curious to this group, you collectively have a ton of on the ground and, in the C-suite, for lack of a better term, experience of the evolving landscape of quality. How have you guys seen that evolve? So I'm going to use old world, new world, traditional quality vendors, and then data first or data-driven quality vendors. So Keith, maybe we'll start with you, then Jay and Chetan, if you guys can hop in. What's the evolution of quality look like at manufacturers, specifically auto OEMs or auto suppliers?
You know what? I'm going to go a little bit earlier than that, Shyna, I think because of the evolution. I worked at one of the earliest manufacturing jobs that I was involved in. One of the companies I was running back then was in the very high-tech satellite antenna manufacturing business. And we still, even though we were making communications, antennas that are working on communication satellites that are kind of running not only everything from television and what people would see there, but heavy duty within the military environment and the defense environment and traffic, dealing with air traffic control and lots of things that are really important. And yet we still had an organization within the company not all that long ago that kind of had a box come in from a supplier, and you open up the box and you took out some tools and you started measuring for accuracy, and you sort of, it was all very much reactive. Yes, we told you the specs that we wanted the product to be made, but before we could actually ensure that we could put it into a product that we were making, we had to actually physically take some calipers to it and do all these other types of measurements to it just to say that it was going to work. You compare that to today, right? Today, we're assuming that the supply chain has the tools to ensure that in volume, things are coming into a facility to spec, they're meeting requirements, they're compliant on every front. And then we're utilizing the data that we're capturing to say, okay, the likelihood that a particular component is going to start to have an issue based on the data that we've historically captured, we may be too early to worry about it. We may be in the middle, but either way, we're viewing this not from, hey, let me take up calipers and let me take a few other micrometers and things like that to check things out, or let me physically pick up every single thing that comes into my factory and inspect it with human eyes. We're looking at it from a completely different perspective of way out in advance, saying, how do we think this particular component will make it through the quality cycle, and where should we be looking on a go-forward basis for any kind of concerns?
So much more proactive than reactive historically, to your point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Jay, Chetan, anything to add there? The shift from traditional quality or reactive quality and how data will impact it?
Yeah, I could just kind of continue what Keith was saying. In order to make all this magic happen, data is becoming the core fabric of the organizations. Data is becoming strategic assets of the organization, right? Today, the automotive industries are investing heavily in modern platforms, in AI, in cloud computing, and skilled labor, skilled talent basically use this data, right? And then I think they are really automating everything. So to provide real-time data analytics with governance and privacy, right? Governance and privacy always needs to be important. So you will, software-defined vehicles, right, where they will update the car or the vehicle automatically, right? Or you see connected vehicles where it will give you information about the driver's behaviors, in-vehicle personalization. You have seen a lot of investments in data-driven development for autonomous cars, blockchain and predictive analytics for battery material sourcing. So what I'm trying to say is that data is becoming a part of their core fabric. It's not an afterthought. It's like, hey, you need to make this happen in order to drive all these initiatives, right? So that's kind of what my thought was, to just add to what Keith was saying. What is the industry doing now? And there you see leaders like Tesla, GM, Ford up there, like doing this, and then the others are trying to catch up, right?
So beyond just going from reactive to proactive, but also gathering a data foundation even on how consumers are using the vehicles, to your point, in an autonomous world or in a more software-driven car world, probably more software than mechanics know with a modern vehicle, and being able to collect all that and drive insights from that, and to the earlier use cases that Jay kind of talked about, teeing up some key questions and hypotheses for us to go and unlock. So we touched on some of these things already, but I'm very curious. Looking ahead, we talked about the macro unpredictability happening right now, but what are some of the trends, maybe top 3 in the next few years, that manufacturers should be doing in order to thrive and, more importantly, equip themselves to be resilient in this macro uncertainty? Round robin, anybody can jump in first.
Well, I'll jump in. Some of what you guys are saying is giving me some ideas for solving some other things here in the industry. But going to answer Shyna's question, I think future-ready manufacturers, again, it's not just about reacting. That pattern we're talking about, it's more about anticipating, right? It's just where we're going in terms of where technology is today with AI. And then now we're talking about, all the way to AI agents, to agentic AI.
Super intelligence.
Yeah, and so that has evolved, right? That has evolved from collecting folks on the line or team members online, writing issues in a, spreadsheet, like a printed sheet.
Tablet, yeah.
And uploading that or scanning that. It's evolved from that to keying it in to now cameras on the line, to machines on the line that are able to detect, right? And with the use of AI, they're feeding AI models with historical issues, and now it's able to detect an issue, right? And leverage AI with the human touch, right? A company like Toyota, they have a Japanese term called judoka, which is basically enhancing a human capability, right? And so with the machine, right, comes an end-on cord where now a human can interface with it, and that's where AI is. And so now you're able to leverage AI to anticipate issues, proactively identify use cases, design a roadmap that can evolve with the market shifts quickly, with like EV growth or even tariff impacts. And then, be able to use agentic AI, right? Automatic systems that will detect, recommend, and even initiate fixes by integrating with partners. Again, it's all going towards connected systems. So you'll be able to go from inspection tools to corrective systems with a human overlooking it.
So it sounds like the macro trend is, to your point, the connected systems that allow manufacturers to be much more proactive with recommendations around fixes before they even need to use Keith's language, turn the screw to go make it happen or make a fix. Chetan, Keith, what about you guys? Top macro trend.
I think a data-centric automotive organization is the way to go. That will dominate, will drive personalization, drive customer experience, because that's what more people are asking for more and more. Drive, I think, operational excellencies, right? But most important is it will unlock new revenue opportunities, right? So it's not just about get the data, clean the data, get the data, look at data, look at opportunities that this data, revenue opportunities that this data can also bring, right? And build that culture. Everybody should be humming data in the organization.
I love that you bring that up, Chetan. We're talking about suppliers, obviously, as well as auto OEMs. So we were just talking earlier this morning about how Tesla has insurance. And obviously, a lot of that is built upon the data foundation they have of how users are driving, how many miles, the intensity, obviously, actuary risk. And I'm sure they're able to drive a healthy margin off of that.
100%. Absolutely. Thank you.
Keep macro trend.
So I think right now is going to be a great time in history for us to look at how people are reacting to the political/economic trends that are going on, right? The uncertainty around tariffs, and as an example, the uncertainty around, and I should say the sort of drive towards forcing people to rethink where they're actually acquiring product, manufacturing product, ultimately integrating it into the OEM environment, is you're going to see the people that have utilized the right tools, that have been spending the time properly, will be able to adapt quickly. So if you suddenly have a supplier that you've been using for 20 years that comes out of a certain country and no longer can you use that supplier because you're going to have to make it in your own backyard, how is that going to work for you? Or your manufacturing facilities on your own happen to be in a different country and you're going to move them into the US. Where are you going to see problems? Were you smart enough to capture enough data way back when, the first time you launched a product in a different country, to understand what is going to happen when you do it in the United States? And then if you've had that data first mentality, then you're probably going to be in a good position. But the uncertainty is going to drive all kinds of issues, certainly on the quality side of not only the automotive industry, but anybody who is picking up and moving factories or moving suppliers or changing their supply chain significantly.
Yeah.
That creates all kinds of opportunities for companies like ours, of course, but where we're hoping we're going to have the biggest bang for the buck is in that capture of that data. So that the next move that has to happen, we've already established for our customers. What did the trends look like? How did it work out this last time? And how's it going to work out in the future?
So the predictive nature of what the data can provide. So I heard connected systems from Jay, net new revenue streams from Chetan. And then to your point, Keith, the predictive nature of what the data can actually help you drive to. All right, we're almost at the end of time, but I want to play a quick game of Mythbusters, if that's okay. I think there is a lot of energy, excitement, obviously, about AI and agentic and superintelligence. Jay, as we alluded to earlier, what is a top myth that you guys would bust in the automotive manufacturing space, supplier or OEM, that leaders should take on, for lack of a better term, in the near future to really leverage data to change the way they operate?
Now,
Oh, but
I'll
yeah,
jump real
please.
fast. AI is a great tool for all kinds of different applications. It's going to be, what we're calling AI today will just be called something else in the future, right? It's just going to be part of data processing. But what we're learning from it is that there are opportunities for replacement of certain functions that maybe were just a little too manual over the years and didn't stay ahead of or caught up with technology. So all of that is great stuff. I think the myth is that AI is going to, make humans obsolete in these processes. It's not. It takes too much thinking and creativity. And we've seen the creativity that comes from all the companies that have figured out how to use data and have figured out how to use technology to create better products. It's not going to replace it. It's only going to enhance.
So we're all going to still have jobs. Jay, Chetan?
One myth to bust would be quality is only a manufacturing issue.
Mm.
Again, I'm going to connect it back to my theme of connected systems, connected data, right? Quality can occur at any state of producing a product, right? Like I talked about in the whole battery example, even the matter of transporting raw materials and during transportation, environmental changes, loading and unloading of the material, right?
Mm.
There's a lot that goes on in producing a product, and it's not just in assembly, right? And it's not just in, converting that raw material on a machine to a stamped part, for example. And so you need to focus on collecting data everywhere so then you can connect it and see where truly the root cause is coming from.
Mm. So apply the quality one methodology best practice across all aspects of business, not purely just the literal plant manufacturing floor. Chetan, I'm going to hand it to you.
Just very quick, AI, I think, does not replace human intuition. It actually augments it. And I think the best outcome would be when AI and human judgment or human creativity or human emotional intelligence work together and not in competition. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, it's the old AI is not going to replace your job. It's the person who's using AI better than you that may replace your job, right? So all of us staying ahead of how we're thinking about leveraging those workflows and that tool, frankly, in our skill sets. Well, thank you guys very much for joining today. My 3 takeaways was definitely around number one, Jay, to your point, this data foundation, totally relevant and pertinent, especially if we want to drive, to Keith's point, proactive approach to quality versus a reactive, oh crap moment. And then Chetan, I love your point about net new revenue streams and the power of unlocking net new revenue and recognizing revenue faster, frankly, as well within our existing systems using data and obviously AI as a tool and, to your point, augment kid partner. That's all the time we have today, but thanks everyone for joining. Please do share, give us any feedback, ask any questions. Happy to follow up, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining. Bye.